and said, go to
Oh, wow. How we visit that center?
I believe
Oh, thank you. And thank you for visiting. If anyone around here knows about that. And if he can't help you, there may be some people in there.
Oh, yeah.
people are on LinkedIn.
Joe, can you? Let me, I can. Anyway. Right behind you.
You try connecting to see if the people on YouTube Live want to see you.
Oh, right, we've got a bunch today. That's great.
Or just off the top. I don't.
Like we're talking about
Where's the remote? Is that good enough for me? May I run to the restroom?
Yeah, it's not part of the fire. Let's sit down as well. This report, in Fremont, I live in the streets now. They have marked in the sun.
Is it working? Okay.
How's
it going?
That's when you get in touch with your insurance guy.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah, Eddie. Hold this and dance in front of the screen. People who are online.
super experienced nobody I can think of, but let me think a little bit more.
I don't have power
Get back to
here.
you. Would you send me an email? Sure, yeah. No, that's fine.
No fun was had at all.
It looked like fun. Good.
Did you see my wife's Philly face
I
face?
did, yeah, and I was like, what, does he live in Las Vegas? Because every time I talk to you recently, you're at that sphere, it feels like.
Brandy wants to go to the Sphere for every act that's there.
That's all.
Like she feels entitled to something. I mean, it's a cool experience. Otherwise,
And is everything $500 there?
no. We got into that company for $175 and $50.
Eagles was paying it?
Eagles is next. Yeah, starting in October. And it just extended through January. But they're only paying like
Yeah, let me think about it.
Fridays and Saturdays. 2 days a week. That's it.
It's Eddie Moran, M-O-R-A. Oh, really? All right, sounds good. I'll let me take a look and let me think about it a little bit. I'm gonna write myself a note about all your properties and grants in general.
This is the thing beyond just what's happening in the Sphere. Someone who thinks
She said that, I don't know if this is allowed, because it's not in her name anymore, but she said she would rather come and overnight
Ooh,
herself.
that's amazing. That's forever.
Rather than us sending it through
Why
regular
not?
mail.
I support it.
She has to drop off the key fob too. She said, do you mind if I just grab the check and overnight myself, because I don't want to wait any longer.
Yeah.
It's not in her.
Ask Eddie. I think that's okay. I'm trying to process what that would mean.
Okay, yes, I'm ready to focus with that. Oh, really? Yeah,
That's
we
good.
talked about
You watch that?
I think I watched the first season.
Before we get started. So it's been recut for most people.
Okay.
She has to come by and drop off the
Yeah,
key.
his brother, I think, was his son.
And then recut.
He's the guy
Yeah.
from Tropic
Yeah.
Thunder. He's the
Okay.
pyro guy in Tropic Thunder. He says he's found it down.
I have to come drop it.
Oh, I need to make this work with my phone.
Ooh, technology.
I mean,
Share
I'm not
agreement.
with that.
Oh, no. Check your internet connection. Sure, I'll check my internet connection.
Something looking great, but it really shouldn't leave
Leave our site.
Do you not need to have a Apple device to control?
Okay.
So I think.
No, I have a remote on my phone. But
Do you have an Apple app on your phone? Is that what it is?
no, it's a Canva app.
I just see that causing even more problems. Like if that
Or that's the wrong address or something.
Is it, are they on the same network?
Well, this will just share a QR code. It says it's disconnected from the internet, which is interesting
That's frustrating.
and not true.
That's frustrating and not true.
Well,
every day, and they didn't seem to know what they were doing. And when Joe and I were about that, actually, we were trying to take the West yesterday, 3.5 weeks, yeah, whatever. Let's talk about it after that.
And she said, I'm gonna be there to drop off the key fob. I'm like, okay. Like, okay. So I don't.
You can ask Joe how he feels about it.
Said ask
Joe-
you.
Okay.
What is
I
there-
would prefer send a staff member with her to an overnighted place or whatever, but I don't think it should be out of our possession.
yeah.
Because once she sends it to a wrong place and it's not a check to us, it's a check
Yeah.
to, and it's not a check to her.
That's right. It's not her money. It's not our money. Yeah.
So if we had somebody run wherever she wants to go to overnight, then that would make us feel better.
That would make me feel better too.
Jasmine, we might have to put you into the ringer by sauna today. Because you know how she says she wants to overnight it herself?
That's even less than that.
Technically, we're not allowed for it to leave our
The other one was $11. The other one
So we're gonna overnight it?
cheaper. The other one was $11.
If she wants to get it done right away, like as soon as she lives here, then we might have to have you go.
Still
Oh,
trying.
with her?
I took her
Or like
car
follow
off,
her.
put your car
Call
on.
her.
Just let me know when you want me to.
Well, tell
You
her,
put,
but like,
you
that's
took her
because we
Corolla
can't.
off and put on the new one.
Okay, fine, I guess. It's weird, but I'll do it, I guess.
I know, I know. Do you want me, do you need, is this what you want to show?
43 a month.
I don't know.
Prorated, of
Last
course.
page?
No, I have a bunch of my notes.
I understand. Thank you.
When you let me know when it's in your possession.
I will, that'll be tomorrow night. I'll text you.
Shall we get this party started? Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
We're good. I said I'm good. We're good.
Oh,
We're
my
good.
bad.
Sorry. It's all good. It's all good. How is everyone?
Dandy.
Got a quick thumbs up. Dandy. Good.
Dandy.
Cool. Cool. Can we start with some wins and gratitude, please? I need it.
Let's do, anybody do anything fun for the 4th of July at least? We haven't met since then. Nobody did anything fun.
Wow.
I know it's kind of a long time, it was like 2 weeks ago.
I hung out and tried to comfort my dogs from the Oakland fireworks that were nonstop.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the world was ending, but.
I am so grateful that we got a new dog about a year ago. Anxious is about everything except fireworks. She can do fireworks just fine. Sleeping like a baby. It's amazing. But I know that experience from the last puppy. Whew, that is rough.
Just coaxing them out from under their bed is.
Yeah. Yeah. Rosie, do you have something?
Yeah, I did something fun. I did a pizza party for 3 little boys, 7 and 8-year-olds. My next door neighbor, another one 2 houses down, and another one around the corner. These little boys I've known for about 2 years now. And what I did is I went to the pizza parlor that I like, picked up lunches for all 3 of us, and we had a picnic
Very
by
cool.
the playground.
That's
And then
awesome.
these little kids at 9 years old and 8, they want to do something all the time. So we came up with 3 games. I let them go. 2 of them themselves, I had prizes. We had so much fun together, and now they all say hi to me.
That's
And
awesome.
my parents, it was lots of fun. I had a blast. 2
Very
prizes
cool.
were water guns.
Nice.
The one just started shooting right away.
Bought a new car, you said?
But,
Oh,
oh,
nice.
Ioniq 5.
Oh, the Hyundai electric car?
Yes,
Nice, nice. I know a couple people here that got
what
those cars.
was it called?
the Ioniq 5.
Ioniq 5, okay.
It's
Very cool.
car and driver, car of the year.
Oh.
You're twinning with Bamal and Preet now.
All right.
We're tripling, yeah.
Triple-in. Somebody else, oh, was that you? Had a hand
Yeah,
up?
so about 3 weeks ago, we were in Las Vegas for a few days, where it was only 106, 7, 8 every day.
Sure.
We
That's
came
fun.
home and we went up to visit my wife's mother, who was celebrating her 98th birthday on the 4th of July. So we always celebrate the 4th of July big. And that was in Grass Valley, California, Nevada City, California, if you all know where that is. It was only 100 and some odd degrees there for the time we were there. So I'm very grateful to be back here today when it's a beautiful day.
There you go. I think it's gonna be like 82 today, which is amazing.
Oh, that warm. The high up where I live it was 66, I think, today. That's July.
Did you raise your hand, Jasmine? Did you just raise?
No, I
She's
was.
thumbs
I was
downing.
bragging.
Oh, is that brag? It's. I don't think it's a good thing. That's cold in July. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Advantage of living up in the hills by the water.
Or disadvantage. Yes.
Yeah, or disadvantage.
All right. Time for one or two more. You think? Let's do it.
Anybody else have anything to share? Or any other wins? Any real estate wins? Let's hear one of those. Anybody got any new listings or anything in the contract or anything in the escrow? I know a few of you guys do.
I love to see so many people here at the beginning of the meeting. This is usually where we end up about halfway through. So I'm curious, why is everyone here? Yeah,
That's
you
not
wanna
coming
win.
to
I love it.
that's not coming towards the end. So if you want to win, you guys gotta stay for the
No,
whole
it's
thing.
coming at some point. Yeah.
I'm here because our cleaning lady is at the house today. So I'm here.
That's awesome.
It's a solid reason.
So, is the ticket announcement the one that was announced yesterday?
No.
That the person in our office wanna?
We'll talk about that too.
Yes.
So we have 2 ticket
Because
announcements.
I would have made that my good news of the day.
Oh, that's
Unless you're gonna
true.
do it.
Oh, well,
We
she
heard
just
yesterday that
arrived,
somebody
actually.
here-
That's yeah. So if just
You wanna
to
hold up?
press on Eddie's point, so the full ride to Mega Camp was announced yesterday on our call, and one of us did win it, and we'll share who that was as a win a little bit
Yeah.
later on, if that's cool. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, all right, one more. This is feeling good. I like this. All right, fine, I'll go. I've had a rough past few weeks, and one one piece of humor that came out of it. Most of us got lice while we were on vacation up in Portland.
lice.
Yeah,
Is that
not
the
me,
good news?
not me. I was like, I don't have enough hair, I guess, for them to be interested in. So we sat in a lice clinic getting treated for.
Yay, lice clinics, is that the good news? No. Keep asking.
No, there's no good news actually. It's just it's kind of fun now, funny. So we were in a lice clinic for about 4 hours on our last day of being in Portland, while also on hold with Chase Bank for those entire 4 hours, trying to get some business done.
Oh, no, that's not
I guess the relief came afterwards. We hung out in the redwoods for the following 2 days just to release the stress and weight of what was supposed to be a fun vacation. So it ended on a really positive note with some good times in the redwoods and up in Trinidad on the beach, Trinidad, California, and a really great family time. I'm really grateful for that. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yes.
Lice gone, Chase pickup?
Lice are gone. Chase. Yeah, we got it done. It ended up being about Annie and I spent about 6 hours cumulatively on the phone, mostly on hold. Yeah. Okay.
Could be
Anywho.
worse, could be worse. You could be dealing with Patelco credit, Annie.
Oh, I don't know if okay, fine. That's fair. I don't know Patelco. I know Chase very well now. All right, and
I don't
my.
know if you heard the Patelco issue.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they were shut down, held hostage, God knows what happened.
Yeah.
And all their customers couldn't get any money.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Created a lot of
somebody
confusion.
here had to
Extra
deal with
approvals
that.
This last week with wiring, down payments, we
Yeah.
had problems with Patelco.
That's a good point. We eventually got our business done. It took 6 hours, but it happened. Thank you for. So it's a win.
Yep.
All right, and my remote isn't working, so we get to press buttons. So we'll start with
So,
some.
Joe,
Yes.
the reminder is we get through tough times and
We get
changes.
through tough
And this will
times,
help us in
yeah.
our discussion later.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Growth is sometimes painful, but we get through it, and we're all the better for it. Yeah. Thanks, Eddie. All right, what do we have going on? So we just are highlighting some of the big stuff and most important stuff, including our Ignite classes. We're down here.
Yep.
Win with the buyers this afternoon. Win with the buyer. Also win the buyer. Win the seller and work with buyers and sellers are all this week.
And this one's being held by our very own Diana.
Oh, cool.
So that'll be fun.
Awesome. They're always at k2badvisorsclassroom.com, and they're always 1 to 3 on whatever day of the week they are, Monday to Thursday. Sweet. We've got our ALC meeting today, so this is a great opportunity to witness masterminding that goes on with our top producers in our office. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about, well, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about here in a little bit related to card forms releases and how that may change the way, or will change the way that we do business. So that's, again, anyone is welcome from 1 to 2:30 as an audience member. Yep. Not a participant. We've got Ignite at Dark, so if you're unable to make the daytime classes, here's all the nighttime classes.
Got one this Thursday. Win the buyer.
Trying to find it.
Today.
Is that, I'm confused by this. Is that
18th.
make and receive? No, it's
7:16.
below. Negotiate
Oh, I'm all the
offers.
way down here. I think we're in June still. My
Yeah,
bad.
and date is on top. Yeah. I got confused last time, I'm confused this time. It's all good, we'll get through it. All right, and this is a cool one.
Yeah, this Thursday, Wilson Young from the Burlingame office, or Peninsula Estates, will be coming in to teach a farming class. For those of you who don't know who he is the CEO or the owner of Own Real Estate. We brought them back into the KW Advisors world late last year. They're about a 20-man team, about $200 million in volume year over year. So if you guys want to learn from one of the best, be here this Thursday, 11 to 12 o'clock. He will be teaching it himself.
And he's here in person.
He's here in person.
Awesome.
Please
Fun
RSVP
guy,
so that he can have the right materials for you as well when you guys come.
There's a link. Yeah, he's a great guy
Yep.
too. Very smart, attuned business person.
And then next week, Danny Hara, for those of you who don't know, he is the leader of the Real Estate Planner. He's doing a little tour around the Bay Area. He's going to be at KW Thrive and KW Santa Clara. So for those of you who want to learn from him about listings, he'll be there on July 22nd from 10 to 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and he focuses on, so he calls his community the real estate planner because he's focusing on planning long-term real estate, well, plans for families. So we're talking about legacy and estate planning, we're talking about 1031 exchanges, and that sort of thing, so that we're creating not just a transactional relationship with a client, but a long-term relationship with repeat business and referral business and all that. Great guy to learn from. He's from Hawaii. So he'll be in Cupertino on the 22nd. He'll be in Burlingame, if that's more convenient for you, on the 26th. All right, and sign up there. Oh, there's 2 of those. All right. Steven?
Next Tuesday, we have an appraisals class with you, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we get appraisals, we should know, one of the things we talk about in this class is how to actually understand these archaic reports, right? And how to have a conversation about them before you get them and then when you get them with your buyers, to prepare them and set expectations so that they can make. I had a situation just last week on my deal that closed yesterday, which is very exciting.
That's a
where
win.
we went in non-contingent, having had a whole conversation about what happens with the appraisal. And so my clients were on tenterhooks waiting for this appraisal and hoping that it would come in at their sale price.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is open to everybody as well.
And we had an agent, Anda, I think, had a bad experience with appraisals recently as well. And yeah, just hearing what can go right and what can go wrong and how to handle it is always valuable. So in person.
Bad, but it's one learning experience.
Okay.
Learning experience.
Okay.
Love to hear that. Positive
Very well said.
mindset.
Anda was a pro in supporting her client too, and so it's always great to see how agents really step up and look after the best interests of
Yeah.
their clients.
Awesome. I love to hear that. All right.
All right, 75 Thrive. Danny Hara is actually teaching the next one as well, 1031 Exchanges, which is this Thursday.
11 o'clock, is that right? There's no link on this
Yes.
one.
Yeah, 11 o'clock to 12:15. We always have it live here in the office, so if you guys want to catch it here, feel free to come by.
Yeah, I'm just skimming what we're talking about here. I see some social media stuff with Rachel Adams-Lee.
We have our very own Kelly Cody.
Yep, for systematizing for success. Bridget's talking about don't work the weekends. That sounds real nice. Let's talk to Bridget. All right, cool. It's coming up. All right, and then Career Visioning Light is happening on the 25th up in Burlingame at the
Yep.
Peninsula Estates. This is for people that might be looking to hire on the horizon, whether you're growing a team or ready to hire your first assistant. This is the class for you.
Yep.
Do this before hiring.
Yep.
And if you're not looking to hire anytime soon, this is not the class for you. So
Yeah,
just
and this
ignore
is
it.
usually a 2-day class, and they've condensed it into a 1 4-hour class. So if you guys are looking for the shorter version, I highly suggest come to this one. And then next Friday, I have my book club as well. Last time I wasn't able to make it happen because I got sick. But come around next Friday, July 25th, from 3 o'clock to 3:45. I will be here for the first session
And all the sessions.
and all the sessions. And then the next day, we have our next walk in the park, right, Jasmine?
Yeah, if you guys remember our hike at Coyote Hills, which was a lot of fun, and everyone was like, oh no, I should have gone. Well, now you have an opportunity. And this one is all flat, so you don't have to worry, you know, if you have any pain or anything, we'll go slow. It's a walk and talk, not a hike. So it'll be really fun, and you'll get to, you know, see part of Fremont and see your fellow Eagles.
Yep, 9:10, we'll be meeting there. And if you want to carpool, we can coordinate that as well.
And it's just right down here, so.
What?
Carpool around the lake?
Yeah, carpool around the lake. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Sightseeing from the car.
Is it gonna be on Facebook?
All
And the
right.
new forms.
But yeah, let's take some time with this. So Eddie, you want to
Yep.
come chat?
So I'm gonna start, I think, with some dates and a little bit of perspective, and Joe's gonna kick me in the butt if I get too far into the weeds with some of that stuff. Deal?
Sounds great.
Okay, so let's talk first about dates. So we've all been anticipating changes to the MLS and changes to the way that we do business as real estate agents when we're representing a buyer in regards to commission. We've had we've been talking about this for months right now. On June, or somewhere around June 24th, CAR was scheduled to do their regular June revisions release. They just about every year they update some forms, give us some new forms. We had the NAR settlement somewhere around March, and that kind of changed the trajectory for some of what was expected in the June release. CAR had already intended to release quite a few forms in the June release, but because of the NAR settlement, they had to update and work on commission-related forms. We've talked a lot about that. We were kind of waiting in anticipation to see what they would come up with. Somewhere in about a week or so before the forms release in June, we thought we had what we needed. We were looking at a set of 60-something forms, 20 of those approximately had to do with commission, and we thought we kind of had a game plan going. Right before the release to the public, CAR pulled back the 20-something forms that had to do with commissions or compensation, buyer's agent compensation, because they needed further review. I'm told that DOJ wanted to take another look. They really wanted to pull them back and take another look. And when they re-released them, which they've done for consumption at least, for us to at least review, there's been some pretty substantive changes from the drafts we saw in June. So this past week, last maybe Wednesday, CAR released some forms like a new listing agreement, new buyer rep agreement, and the kind of associated forms for other types of listings, commercial listings, et cetera. And they've updated them with a new way of doing business around commissions. They are updated in the CAR system. They are available to us for review. And on July 24th, which is next week, they will be available for us to use in zip form. So right now they're available to view at car.org. On July 24th, they'll be available for use. The biggest takeaway I have with what we've got now and where we're going right now is that CAR has made a decision to step back and move away from any conversation about cooperative commissions. So the NAR settlement was putting us in that path, on that path, but the original drafts of forms that CAR were producing still included language about the option for a seller to offer a commission, et cetera, et cetera. Well, CAR has pretty much decided to kind of back away altogether from talking about co-op commissions. There's talk about in some of the auxiliary forms about something like a concession credits to potential credits to buyers so that they can meet other obligations. There's a roadmap for us to, for a buyer to ask a seller to take over their obligation to pay a buyer's agent commission. We've had that. That's the 3G3 line in the purchase agreement. We'll get to that again in a minute. But other than that, CAR is kind of removing language altogether about cooperative commissions from our from these documents. So the big takeaway then is kind of this, doubling down on a takeaway we've had for a while, which is you all absolutely have to start negotiating for yourselves as buyer's agents to get a commission that you believe you're worth. You need to go in knowing your value and get that commission from your buyers in the relationships you're building with buyers. There may be ways to ask a seller in a purchase agreement to take over that obligation, but there's very narrow availability for that. Just really one straightforward path of doing that. And so anybody in this room who was thinking, we're definitely going to have the ability to still get it from the seller. I'm not as clear on that. I'm not as sure of that anymore. There was a point where I thought maybe as an industry we would create new customs and it would still come from the seller. We can do it in the purchase agreement, but I think that there are a lot of you that are really very genuinely going to have to get a commission from your buyer client when you're representing a buyer. The obligation per the NAR lawsuit is that with every home you show, when you start doing the actual representation of a client and you go to show them a home, you need to have this written agreement with your buyer client in advance of doing so. So since January of this year, we've told you with your files, when you're representing a buyer, we want to see a BRBC, a buyer representation agreement. We started to set the stage that we needed to see them, but they weren't mandatory in terms of in the state of California or as members of a realtor association. But now, come August 17th, they are going to be absolutely required. Like completely required, the way it would be required of you to get a listing agreement when you're representing the seller. So we're going to look at the forms real quick and talk about a couple of things. But the big takeaway, if you get nothing else from what we talk about today, is that you have to have professional consultations with your buyer clients when you're representing a buyer. You have to sit down with them, preferably in person, I think, and talk to them about what your representation means, and be prepared to talk to them about the commission that you expect for your services. And be prepared to have conversations about your client's financial ability to pay an obligation to you for a commission. That is just a reality now that you're going to have to be really clear about that. Is that a good kind of overview? We're going to do some classes. We're going to, CAR is still doing some town halls. That's where we are right here. Again, the updates were really released for kind of consumption for us to review just last week. Do you want to read those dates?
Yeah, so the town hall's coming up still tomorrow at 9 a.m. and Friday at 9 a.m. There's live town halls that you can sign up for. That should get you there. Otherwise, car.org on the right side, you'll see a giant link for new forms released, and it'll take you to the list. There is also a recording available of last Thursday's town hall that you can find through that same link.
BRLG is currently our broker resource law group, who we take the lead from as our risk management attorneys with all risk management related things like new forms. They are currently reviewing everything. They're going to give us their take on it, hopefully on Monday. We'll keep an eye on your emails. We'll let you know when we know. CAR is already offering classes that you should take. I'm going to do a session. We just decided today that I'm going to do a session here on Friday at 11. That we'll get on the calendar, where I'll go through the buyer representation agreement and the listing agreement in more detail than we're going to do today, and I'll talk to you about this broker compensation advisory and the MLS addendum and how these forms can kind of help us with some of the conversations. So we're going to spend some time really talking about this. The forms are going to be available next week. The real important, super important dates to remember are August 17th, when NAR settlement agreement rules come into effect, and somewhere around August 12th, we're expecting some updates to Bay East and our other MLSs, where they will be removing the cooperative compensation line item from the MLS. So let's go. Let's keep going.
Take a quick look at the first page of the listing agreement.
Okay.
Look at all that red.
So the best news about the listing agreement, let's step back from the whole conversation for just a second about compensations changing and all of the rest, and let's just talk about something great that happened, which is that the listing agreement is now been updated to in grid. I think it's great, in grid form, right? So we all remember about 3 years ago, something like 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, the purchase agreement was updated so that all of the kind of substantive terms, all of the kind of meaty stuff that changes from deal to deal that we need our clients' eyes on when we're trying to make an agreement with them, that all got updated into something that we started to call the grid. The first 3 or so pages of the purchase agreement has a spreadsheet view, essentially, of really substantive terms for the agreement. And now our listing agreement is kind of mirroring that format. And actually, we only have a snippet here of the listing agreement, but this is from the first page of the listing agreement. I'll tell you that it's the first page and a little bit of the second page that where there's a grid now. So where the RPA has a 3-page grid with different moving pieces and terms, the listing agreement has a 1 and maybe a 1/4-page grid. And we know from our experience with listing agreements that they're a lot more straightforward, that there's, the terms there are fewer terms, et cetera. And the terms that you'll see on this page here, on most of the listing agreement, are going to be really familiar to most folks who are worked as listing agents. Listing period, a beginning and an end date, which we always need if you want to keep your real estate license, because that's a serious infraction if you don't have a committed period in a contract with your client. Beginning and end date shall not exceed 24 months. That's per a recent law that you can't have these longer or open-ended agreements. Property-specific listings, you would check for manufactured or probate. So if you have some kind of, if you have to tailor it for a certain kind of deal, you can do so. Otherwise, the default is for your regular 1-to-4 on this. A big old paragraph here that reminds us of something that was actually in our previous agreements already, but because of the NAR settlement, we really need to just drive it home. Notice the amount of rate of real estate commissions is not fixed by law. And then this got tweaked a little there, set by each broker individual and may be negotiable between seller and broker. Clear enough. And then it says that there's an attached form called the BCA, the Broker Compensation Advisory. So I brought a Broker Compensation Advisory up in front of this room maybe a month ago and talked about how much I loved it. Well, bad news is that they've changed it considerably because of the updates to the other forms and because of their yeah, no, but it's okay because the buyer compensation advisory still accomplishes a lot of what we wanted to accomplish. It's a maybe 2-page form that addresses first the seller and then later the buyer. Says to seller, here's how compensation works generally speaking from the point of view of a seller and their agent, the listing agent. Then it says to the buyer, here's what you can expect, buyer, when it comes to compensation, and it's pretty clear that you have to make some kind of formal agreement with your agent about how they're going to get paid, etc. There's some mention the possibility that you can ask a seller in a purchase agreement to take over this obligation, but hey, buyer, expect to potentially, to probably have to pay a commission, etc. So that's the BCA that it refers to. And then we get into the compensation piece itself. And this is the stuff that's kind of been changing, and this is what you need to put your eyes on when you look at one of these listing agreements. So the first line is compensation to seller's broker, and you're going to put a percentage in or a flat fee if applicable and if approved. The compensation to seller's broker, you'll notice in parentheses under compensation to seller's broker, it says only seller's side of transaction. So let's just talk about what the big change is. The big change here is that our listing agreements that we've all been using for years first talks to the seller about kind of a gross percentage amount being paid to all agents in the deal, and then breaks that down by saying the seller's agent will be providing a cooperative compensation to the buyer's agent of this piece of that gross amount. So we would fill in something like 5% or 6% that the seller is agreeing overall to pay agents, and how much are we giving to the other side? And we'd fill in something like 3%, 2.5 or 3% there. Well, now you'll see the listing agreement that is now in this nice grid form is also really straightforward. What we're offering, or what we're asking, the commitment we're asking for from our client is a commitment to ourselves, not another party. We're asking the seller to pay us a commission. So, presumably that'll look like 2.5 or 3% or whatever it is that we're asking for from our clients for our commission, and we're not dealing with a co-op commission, right? That is the big change. That's where we're at. There's a line that follows the compensation line that is newer to us, and there's a little checkbox. And whenever you see something in the grid or something in one of our forms with a checkbox, it means that the default, if we leave things as is that piece is not included in our agreement. But if we check it, we are agreeing to include it, right? Makes sense. So additional compensation to seller's broker if buyer is unrepresented. I've got lots of feelings about this and what roads we could lead down with this, but we're not going to get into it, but I'm just going to tell you what it accomplishes. In our listing agreement, we're making an agreement with the seller. We're saying, this is what I charge for my services, this is what I expect as a fee for selling your property, etc. But if we check this box here, we're saying, we may have to ask you for additional compensation in a certain kind of circumstance. There may be circumstances, dear seller, as I'm talking to the seller, there may be circumstances where a buyer comes along and is unrepresented. And if the buyer comes along and is unrepresented, and what I think our attorneys are doing here is they're anticipating some things that could start happening in our new commission climate. There could be more buyers unrepresented. The form is saying, if I check here, I'm telling my seller client as I'm sitting with them, if somebody comes along and they're unrepresented, I can help out, facilitate, make this transaction happen, sell your home, etc. But if that party remains unrepresented, I'm going to be doing a heck of a lot of extra work on your behalf, seller, and I would like an extra piece of compensation for that. Maybe something like 1%, 1.5% extra if I have to actually do all the heavy lifting because the other side isn't represented. So we've always, dual representation, I'll get to you in a second, John, dual representation has always been legal in California, and there are circumstances where somebody could come along who is unrepresented, who wishes to be represented, by you, with your seller client's approval and full buy-in to that arrangement, you could be a dual representation, in which case you would get a separate agreement with the buyer, et cetera. That's not what this is about. This is about those circumstances where somebody comes along, has no money to pay for a commission, presumably, or doesn't feel like paying a commission. Maybe they're working, maybe they have their own attorney that's going to help them. We don't know. But they say to you, I don't want your representation. I do want to put an offer on this property. We're saying to our seller client in advance, if that person comes along, first I want everybody in this room to remember, we're going to sell them something called send them something called a buyer non-agency form. and that's our CYA. That's the form that covers us if we are engaging with a party that doesn't have representation. It is the form that says to that party that doesn't have representation, hey, I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna provide you with forms, I'm gonna send you things, but any bit of help, any bit of info, anything I send you, I'm doing it on the behalf of the seller. I am not representing you, I'm just trying to make this thing work out for my client. And you need to be clear on that. You don't have a representative. If I send you a document, etc., I'm only doing it for my guy, for the seller. So we can arrange these situations with an unrepresented buyer. I don't love them, but if they happen, we're saying to the seller, if this thing comes along where this guy is unrepresented, wants to write an offer on your property, I can help them along, but I expect a little bit of extra compensation. So they're giving us the ability to do that. John, did you have?
So the form that you would use is the form you just described. You would not have a broker-buyer agreement with this person?
No, well, no. You very specifically wouldn't have a buyer-broker agreement with them because you very specifically in this scenario that we're talking about they don't want you representing them, so you don't want to represent them. But to your point, you could, rather than checking, rather than proceeding with them as a non-represented party, if your seller is okay with it, you could suggest dual representation, in which case you would get the buyer representation agreement and get a separate.
And then you would have a dual agency.
Yes.
Versus what, the other thing is not a dual agency.
It's not a dual agency.
And
Yeah.
somewhere in there, you have to talk about compensation from that person.
Yes.
In other words, how do I get paid?
Well, in the circumstance where there's no representation, all of your compensation is just coming from your client, and
Which means
that's
you better have that box checked.
and that's why this
Or you're
box
working
is
for free.
well
Yeah.
for you're at least the
Well-
extra efforts. You're saying I want a little extra money for my
Yeah.
extra efforts.
What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if you don't check that box,
Yep.
and that happens,
Yep. If you don't check that box and it happens, you could modify this essentially, Steve.
Well, John, you gotta remember that as part of the listing, taking the listing agreement, you're gonna have a discussion with the seller as to what the seller is willing to offer by way of either a buyer broker compensation or a concession. So you're already gonna know what the seller is willing or not willing to do. So when you enter into the buyer broker agreement, you're already gonna know what to expect from the seller.
I understand that, but I've already seen listings offering nothing on the MLS.
Yep.
I think those same person are saying, I'm not gonna offer you anything here either.
Yeah,
Which
I think
means
that-
if I do that, what, I'm working for free?
Yeah, I think that there will be. Steve's point is correct that we're going to be having thorough conversations with our clients in advance. And when we're working on the listing side, we're going to get a feel for whether or not we're going to get rid of the idea of cooperating commissions and we're going to use the word concessions, whether or not there's extra money they have that they could give the buyer towards something, the way they would a roof or the way they would a sewer. But in this case, maybe they're willing to offer that towards the buyer's obligation to their client. But I think John's point is a pretty fair point, which is that already in this climate where we do have compensation listed on the MLS, we're already seeing 0%. So what does that mean when it's removed? We're probably gonna get even more 0%, right? And when we do, those buyer clients, I really don't wanna go down all the what if avenues because we'd be here until Christmas. But in those scenarios, you should be darn well sure that you have a buyer rep agreement so that when your client hears or finds out about that property where the seller is absolutely not going to offer a concession, that you have a way to get paid. And in this scenario, when somebody comes out by completely unrepresented, this is something you might want to think about when you're sitting down in your listing appointments, preparing ahead of time for that scenario where somebody might approach you that doesn't want representation. You might want to address with your seller client a way to get a little bit of extra compensation.
Let's pause there.
Yep.
So let's all take a breath real quick.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got some changes happening. We're getting a little into the weeds, so
Yep.
I think it'd be good if we kind of put a pin in the listing agreement.
Yep.
Come to class on Friday, we
Yep.
decided, 11 o'clock. and look out for future classes so that we can ask all these questions.
So
and
I
get in the
asked
weeds.
Joe to do this for me,
Yes.
by the way, to tell me if we're going down different alleys. Because today we want you to become familiar with the forms. And we're all realtors here. There's a lot of smart people in this room, and we're all gonna think of those what ifs and stuff. And we're gonna work through that as a community. And we're gonna get more guidance from BRLG. And I'll be more than happy to go down some of those what ifs in more detail on Friday.
So the way this looks, and I just want to, high level, after August 17th or whatever the day is, July 24th, I sign a listing agreement with a seller, and my form just talks about their side.
Yes.
Let's suppose hypothetically the seller says, I'm happy paying a buyer's agent.
Okay.
Is there anywhere to document that?
So here's the road I didn't want to go down, but what the heck? And Steve kind of brought it up a little bit. There's this concept called concessions, and it's actually not mentioned here in the listing agreement, but it is mentioned in something called the MLSA, the Multiple Listing Service Addendum. Our original listing agreement had all this information about MLSs, why we think you should use it, why it's good for you, et cetera. They decided to take it out and give it its own addendum that gets attached to this. In that form, it addresses this concept of maybe the seller is willing to give some concessions to a potential buyer that wants to come along. And there's a checkbox for the seller wants to give some concessions for a buyer that wants to come along. The buyer's agent that comes along. The seller has a checkbox on this MLSA to say whether or not they would potentially be willing to offer a concession. So there's no committal there, right? It's just it's generalized language. Neil Kalin from NAR, in his discussion on this at Town Hall, said you'll have to document that elsewhere, the amount elsewhere, right? So Carr really doesn't want a part of it.
Yeah.
That's what we're finding out.
And it makes sense. That's part of like what we're talking about with the
Steve,
settlement.
specific.
When you're done answering this question, then I'll add to it.
Okay, so
Without going down a long path.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the issue I'm gonna share
Yeah.
is going to arise on July 24th.
Okay.
Okay.
So my point there is, I didn't want to go too far into concessions because we'll get into classes about concessions. What you need to know now is that Carr wants to remove itself from most of the dialogue about agent to agent, or broker to broker payments. So concessions are principal to principal. Right? So this concept that a principal is going to help the other principal meet their obligation is the same as one principal saying, I'll pay for the roof, I'll give you a concession, et cetera. There is going to be a checkbox on a form that's attached to a listing agreement that said, would you be even open to maybe talking about potential offerings of concessions to the other side, et cetera? And they can say yes, and I would recommend, getting some language in an email about amounts that they'd potentially be willing to offer as a concession. Carr doesn't want any part of it. Steve.
All right, if you take a listing agreement on July 24th or thereafter, and until August 12th, there's still going to be an offer of compensation on the MLS.
That's right.
The listing agreement is silent as to that.
Yes.
Okay? So what you need to do is, and I was gonna
Yep.
bring this up to you and Marty,
Yep.
is that BRLG will probably want to draft language
Yep.
that will need to be added to the multiple listing service addendum
Mhm.
under other, because you're gonna have to include a provision in the listing that the seller agrees to you offering compensation to a cooperating broker until August 12th.
Yeah.
Because it is otherwise silent in the listing agreement.
This opens up another issue, actually, and then we'll go, I promise, which is that Carr is giving us a bridge forms. To bridge, and I don't mean bridge the MLS system, I mean to bridge one situation to the next. It still doesn't kind of deal with what Steve's getting at. I think Steve's point's a good one. And I will suggest that.
It's an issue out there that they've recognized, but they did not provide a solution to it on their own, at least as of Friday.
Yeah.
They threw it to the brokers and said, go go to your attorney and get language to add to the
That's-
listing agreement
that's-
for that gap.
That's right. So we're waiting on something like that. It's a really great point, and I will bring that up. I will say you brought up something else that I do want to really quickly address, which is that we've always had modification of terms for listings, and the modification of terms for listings also previously said modification of terms for listing and buyer representation group. People didn't really notice that, but now they're just broken apart. We have a modification of terms for listings, and we have modification of terms for buyer representation agreements, so that we can change terms, extend periods, change agreed upon amounts, etc. We can do that, and now we have those two forms for our regular course of business, but now we also have two, what I'm thinking of as like bridge forms or fill the gap forms. It's a modification, like a short-term modification of the listing agreement and a short-term modification of the representation agreement that brings one that we've already executed, say, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, into the current language, basically by saying, hey, your listing agreement that you just signed, it's all good, except that you're really just going to pay your seller's agent. You're not going to be paying a cooperative agent. We don't let that happen. And then the form that kind of bridges us from buyer rep to our new buyer rep talks about the limitations of the commission, which I'll get to when we get to buyer rep, and similarly kind of bridges the rules. There's a lot. Let's keep going,
Yes.
Joe.
Cool.
Okay, continuation period is your period that you should fill in. Yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone's clear. What I brought up was a new listing agreement
Yep.
on July 24th and thereafter. What
Yep.
Jay just talked about is modifying existing listing agreements and buyer representation agreements as of August 12th. Because things will change August 12th.
That's correct. That's correct.
Just so we understand.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the form to bridge the gap between the previously signed agreements and what we're expected to do for the NAR settlement, but we're gonna need a little bit of language that bridges the period that Zip Forms releases these forms and the MLS changes theirs.
Next.
There's a lot, and you'll have my support. Just take this takeaway right here. The leadership here, all of the leadership here, all of the people that mentor you, that help lead, you'll have our support every step of the way. So call me, text me if you run into problems with this. Don't get too overwhelmed right now. It's not. We can go down avenues that can overwhelm us, but the basics are pretty simple. You're asking your seller client for a commission for yourself. Let's go to the next one.
You ready for the buyer?
We're going to do the basics and hopefully not get through too many words, but we may have to. Buyer representation and compensation agreement. So the buyer rep agreement, right? Similarly, the good news, because we got to have some good news, the good news is that the buyer rep agreement has also been formatted in the grid form, putting all those substantive terms that we need to be conversant about with our client, really kind of, get to the nitty gritty with. It's all up front. Something I should have said in with the listing agreement is that similar to the purchase agreement, there's a paragraph that you can that's referenced on any given line item where you can go or direct your client to learn more about the specific line item, et cetera. It's just a great format. Representation periods. There's been a little change here, which is it used to be beginning date and then how many days after beginning date, and instead of that, they've actually got a plug-in at the end for a date, which I like better. Another change is that buyer rep agreements are not to exceed 3 months. So where listing agreements can go for 24 months, buyer reps can only go for 3 months. The reality with the buyer rep in 3 months is that you can modify them, the way you could modify a listing to extend the period. So it seems reasonable to me, right? Out looking for a property with a client. The next line is about representation. So we knew when we've been doing all of our trainings on the buyer rep form over the last year or so, we knew that the form that has come out in the last year or so defaults to being a non-exclusive representation agreement. Well, it's the same here. The default is this is a non-exclusive agreement. We can check a box to make it exclusive. Well, that's the same. It's just in grid format with another addition. This exclusivity is only valid if there's an initial done by your client that you're sitting down at the table with on page 15. I'm sorry, paragraph 15. So later on, when we have our paragraphs, there's a paragraph that addresses this. Here's what exclusivity means, here's what you're agreeing to, please initial here. So it's similar, in my mind, to the meeting of the minds paragraphs in the purchase agreement, like liquidated damages or arbitration. It's somewhere you want to be able to, you have to be very careful to direct your client to initial that box in the buyer rep agreement if you're trying to create some exclusivity. We'll talk about exclusive versus non-exclusive in a second, but that's where it happens. The next line is property to be acquired line. Broker, including any associate licensee working for the broker on behalf, provides services of the types of properties and the locations specified below. And this is where we get to kind of talk a little bit more specifically about what the buyer is looking for. It defaults to a single family, but we can turn it into a multi or whatever else we need to turn it into. Location is down to counties and cities, and then we have a room for additional description. The next line is additional buyer preferences and priorities. So we've set some kind of like criteria here, but we've got this opportunity to check a box to ask the buyer to provide us more criteria for their search. That happens by way of a form called the BIPP, Buyer Identification of Preferences and Priorities form. That form is the, what do you want here, client? It's not binding. It doesn't change the terms of the agreement. If you find them something outside of those, the things they indicate on that form, that's fine, but it's somewhere to start with the client. And then properties excluded from representation. You would probably use this line, because the next one, actually if we go to the next page, properties excluded from representation is meant to, so that you can explicitly write down those properties where you maybe know that the client is represented by another party to purchase that. Maybe they had a previous agreement or a some kind of other agreement where that is carved out. Where did it go? Where are we now?
Very next paragraph. So it went
Okay,
One right
from-
below.
Yeah.
H, okay, other financial consider, okay. So, amount of compensation, payments received from from others. So the amount of compensation, this is the key. This is what's changed. If we leave, we could go down every other road of what could happen here or could happen there or how we can navigate or whatever. But really the substantive piece of information we all need to know as an industry is that we need this form and we need to indicate what we expect to get paid for our services. Bottom line, big exclamation point. You as a buyer's agent cannot rely on the way things used to be. They don't exist anymore. So get an amount put in there. Payment received by broker from sellers or others. So I talked about how the listing agreement removed a line for compensation. We talked a little bit about this concept of concessions, that maybe a seller has a little bit of extra, has the ability to offer out to the buyer some potential concessions that'll come out of their proceeds at the close of escrow to help with some of the buyer's burdens. If we are listing agents and we receive an offer that indicates that the client wants a concession, a credit, actually we see this all the time, or we have in the past. Buyer wants a credit to repair the roof. Buyer wants a credit to do whatever. Then we have a thorough conversation with our seller client about the fact that that'll come out of their proceeds, but we can talk to them about why this particular offer with that credit may still be advantageous to our client. It may still be something that they want. We can compare it against other offers, et cetera, and make a decision. Well, this circumstance is not talking about the roof or not talking about a credit towards something, some repair or something like that. It's talking about an obligation that a seller has made to pay a concession in order to meet the buyer's obligation in a buyer rep form. So this, what you're saying is the seller is saying, I will give you a concession so that you can pay your broker, right? So when that happens, when paragraph 3G3 is checked in the purchase agreement and the buyer has telegraphed or hit over the net a proposal for an offer that says, I also want you to pay my obligation to my broker. So they've written the RPA and sent it over the net. It lands in your hands as a listing agent. You need to be able to say to your client, this offer is for $1.5 million. They do want you to take over the buyer's obligation to their broker. They do want that essentially credit or concession. That's in the amount of ABC. It'll be on a form that's provided. Do you want to do it? And we'll need to be able to compare offers and look at those offers that ask for that concession and look at the offers that don't ask for the concession and try to evaluate with our client and try to make sense out of them. Joe has actually created am I right about this? You're not nodding, okay. Has created a net sheet form that can help you plug in some numbers so that you can look at those terms side by side in different offers. So we've said that the buyer can ask for this and that the seller can agree for it. Well, we're being told here, payments received by broker from sellers or others. If broker receives compensation from seller or others for broker's representation of buyer, the amount shall be credited against the buyer's obligation to pay the broker. So what does that mean? It simply means if, hey buyer, we're filling this out, you're agreeing to a percentage that you'll pay me at the close of escrow, but hey, you know what? If I receive that from another party, meaning through the RPA because we've negotiated something, then whatever I'm paid there is going to be applied towards your obligation to me, right? You're going to be off the hook for whatever I'm paid there. So that's I do think that is the one very clear avenue CAR has given us to pass along some of the cost, is to use that ability for a seller to pay over, to take over buyer's obligation. And then we get into some other things, and then I'll open it to some questions because I know that there's probably we're gonna need to get into this a little bit. Continued right to payment for buyer broker involved properties.
Do you mind if we come back to most of that
Yep.
during your class and just
Yep.
see if we've got the framework
Yeah.
laid for the substantive changes that have been made?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
We can do that. All right, so let's see. So let's do a summary then, right? The summary is that listings and our car forms have been changed to really basically take out like explicit language about one side's broker paying the other side's broker. CAR doesn't want anything to do with broker-to-broker payments. They just don't, right? Because of the MLS settlement. So it leaves us in a world where each side is kind of taking their corner and looking for their compensation from their corner.
Yeah.
We thought that was going to happen. Looks like it's going to happen. And there are a couple of little in-between spaces, like asking the seller to take over obligations, that can happen. But really, the takeaways are get your buyer representation settled with your client. There's a form that we can ask them to fill out. I alluded to it before, where the client tells you a little bit about their financial situation, the buyer client. And on that form, they're asked, pretty explicitly where the money's coming from to also pay their obligation to a buyer's agent, and that they have that money, et cetera. Yep.
So can you confirm that 3G2 and the RPA will stay?
3G3
it's gonna stay?
is staying, yeah. It's going to be the fundamental tool we're going to be
Right,
using.
it's
yeah.
gonna be what we end up
It's pretty,
using.
I mean, if
They're not gonna take it away.
there's going to be a lot of considerations for a seller as to whether they want to move forward with that, in terms of
But
price.
it's still there, yeah.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah,
That's
this
right
is
here.
the draft version of the RPA that will be released. Next
So
week as well.
we're going to have to pay careful attention to that checkbox because that's where maybe we can shift some of the obligation. Steve?
I suspect we're gonna have trouble with short questions, so maybe we limit it to 2 or 3. All right, go ahead, Steve.
This is not a question. I was on the town hall this morning at 9 o'clock. Very good, very informative.
Sure.
I highly suggest you to get on one, and they're all being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe do more than one, because you're gonna hear new things every time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned today is that you need to, when you're writing an offer on behalf of a buyer, you need to take into consideration the caps that Fannie Mae has on closing costs credits. Okay, I've always known this, but what came out today is that The lending community has said that if you write an offer and you check 3G3 for the seller to pay the buyer's agent's commission, they're not going to apply that amount of money towards the cap on the credit.
So can I just interject real quickly and say that Neil Killen mentioned this also on the Thursday town hall, that one of the fears we had, or I had, was that if we had to start using 3G3 all the time, asking for a seller to chip in towards the buyer's costs, that lenders were going to start saying, hey, we've got credit caps. This is what Steve is getting at. And there was a little bit of confusion for months whether or not that amount was going to be considered part of the credit cap. So we have line G1 is just generalized seller credits, right? That's the repairing the roof. That's whatever it is you're asking for credit for. Those are always very often capped by lenders, right? At a certain amount, something like 3%.
The way the caps work is if the down payment is less than 10%, the cap is 3% of the purchase price. If the down payment is 10 to 25%, the cap is 6% of the purchase price. If the down payment is more than 25%, the cap is 9% of the purchase price. Those are Fannie Mae guidelines. Now, where this is significant is if you have a buyer putting less than 10% down and you want a credit towards closing costs, but you also want the buyer's commission, broker's commission paid, you need to separate the two. You
So,
need to check
right.
G3 as to the broker's
That's right.
compensation,
And so there was-
and then you can write your credit for
So
whatever up to 3%.
So just to be clear about this, there was some fear that we were going to get told you can't have that 3G3 in there because there's not enough money that the lender could give, et cetera. But Neil Kalin and the CAR team have said that as long as we separate it out, as Steve was saying, and we're really explicit that this one piece is to pay the buyer's obligation, that part that's paying the buyer's obligation to their broker, meaning that compensation part, is not going to be included in our numbers when we're calculating the cap.
And-
That's great news.
Yeah, I think one thing is becoming abundantly clear here is there's a lot of complex moving pieces, and that is why these
Town
town
halls.
halls that are happening, the
That's
classes
right.
on Friday, why they're so imperative that you get to as many as makes sense until you really get it. So these are lying around. This is for the car town halls. That is tomorrow and Friday. So go or watch the recording. Come to Eddie's class
Yep.
at 11 on Friday and look out for a lot more to be scheduled.
Once
Very
BRLG does their own version also, my plan at least is to have it playing here all the time.
Yeah.
Once they have it, we'll record it, we'll get it playing all the time.
And if those times don't work out for you, sign up anyway, because I'll send you a copy of the recording.
Oh, there
That's
you
right.
go, that's
Yep.
good to know too.
Makes it
Great.
easy.
We asked for it.
All right.
So we'll get through, also, I want to say, we'll get through this. It's just a bump. It's just a little bit of a shift of how we do things, but we're going to work through it fine.
Yeah.
Just one other
Yeah.
quick thing, I don't remember where I heard it, but when you're done sitting down or entering into a buyer representation, broker compensation agreement with your buyer, as soon as you're done, the buyer executing that agreement, have them take out their phone and take a picture of page 1 of the BRBC, so they have it with them at all times.
I love
So
it.
when they visit an open house, they get into a discussion with a listing agent about possible representation, they can show them exactly what they've already entered into, or at least they know what they've entered into, so that they're not turning around, because we know
Seems
this is
good.
gonna happen.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's a,
Buyers are
yeah,
going
that's
to
helpful.
enter into more
It's
than
really
one
helpful.
buyer
Yeah.
rep agreement, folks.
Take a
There-
picture
Some
with
of
your
them will
phone.
probably be signing 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yep.
with no clue what's going on.
So-
They're asked on the form whether they have entered into
Yeah,
another
and they're
agreement,
gonna-
but they're not gonna remember
they're
or
not
know.
gonna remember that, so
So this is
have
good
them
piece
take
of
a
advice.
picture of theirs, so they have something to
Yeah.
refer back to when
Yeah.
they're faced with that possible situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we gotta keep moving,
All right,
guys. Let's keep
only a
going.
little bit more time. We got a few people that capped here. Let's give them a round of applause. Satinder, congratulations. Amberine, I don't think you're here, but let's give her a round of applause. She's probably watching through YouTube Live. Tina is out of town, but let's give her a round of applause as well. She's watching through YouTube Live.
Awesome. All right, oops, sorry. That's
We
that's
want to
me.
welcome some new people. Ollie, are you here? I don't think I saw you here. Well, if you do see him, welcome him to the family. Minu as well. She's not here as well. And then Josh and Preet. Josh, let's welcome to the family. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Oh, we gotta fly through some listings. We're not gonna talk about them today. Sorry. If you like any of them, a lot of these people are here, so let's have one-on-one interactions.
Or just reach out to us and we can get you more information.
Absolutely.
So Kelsey's got
Kelsey's
one.
Mountain View. We got
Daniel's got one.
Vallejo. Okay.
Diana's got a couple here. This one's in Hayward, and the next one is also in Hayward.
Awesome.
We got some just listed. Jadip's got one.
I think there were a bunch. Yep.
He's got another one.
San Jose.
He's got, nope, not three. Daniel's got
Daniel.
one as well in
Awesome.
Oakland.
Um,
Vanessa's got one in Hayward as well for the Medford team.
Cool. Awesome. 20 seconds?
Yeah, 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'll be quick. This is not nearly as sexy or exhausting as what you guys have been talking about. If you want to grab this QR code up here in the top corner, there was an article on Bloomberg that just describes what's going on in the insurance industry right now. It was picked up by a lot of trade magazines, actually read about it in the Insurance Journal. The big takeaway from this article is that even lenders are now staffing insurance professionals to try to help push loans through. It really is something that I encourage you all to get ahead of. The best way to get ahead of this is, as soon as you get into contract, please have a conversation with your client. Who are you using for insurance? Encourage them to talk to that person, and if they're not already working with someone, of course, we appreciate
And
the
build in a
introduction.
specific contingency, that was added to the RPA this last year, you can actually build in a very specific line item contingency for insurance, sorry, Stephen.
If you think that the cost of insurance is gonna be a factor in whether or not your client can afford the home or what they wanna offer, feel free to give us shoot us an email, kwadvisors@Greystone Insured. Just give us the address, we can give you a ballpark indication of what it could cost for insurance for that home.
Yeah, I do that standard for all my offers now. I don't submit the offer until I've talked to Steve and have an idea.
Yeah, we can at least give you an idea if it's a $200 a month or it's gonna be $800 a month,
This
right?
is huge, talk to Stephen, talk to your insurance broker.
Steve Pearson.
Yep.
Quick 30-second tip. You're a listing agent. Be
Do it for
proactive
them, yes.
with your sellers and request documentation, paperwork regarding the roof, regarding the plumbing, regarding the electrical, regarding the furnace. All of those things are things that can come up from the insurance companies wanting to know dates and evidence of what was done and replaced. Be proactive with all of that and get as much of that information you can, because you're likely going to be asked for that sometime
Yeah.
during the escrow period.
And thank you, Steve. And the more information that the insurance professional has, the more options they'll have for insurance, which means better pricing and better coverage, right? Real quick, I want to remind everyone, occupancy is both a rating factor and an eligibility factor. It's really important that the insurance company knows what they're insuring, whether we're talking about residential property or commercial property. But really specific to residential, think about ADUs and think about short-term rentals. Most insurance companies don't have an appetite for Airbnb coverage, and so if a home is owner-occupied in the front but has a short-term rental in the back or some combination of that, or just any short-term rental at all, we don't want to give an insurance company a really easy reason to deny a claim, and occupancy is among the easiest, especially if they don't have an appetite for that class of business in the first place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last thing real quick. I
All good, all
promise.
good, all good.
Last summer, it came to our attention in another market center that a lot of the staging companies were putting language in the policy that made their clients responsible for the property that was left in the home. What they're trying to do is get out of having to use their own insurance when something unfortunate happens. And I would encourage you to make sure that someone is reading those policies, that contract language, and if you can, push back a little bit. Because ultimately, there isn't the only insurance that's gonna cover that property is the stager's policy, because you can't insure property that you don't own, right? So don't put your clients on the hook for $20,000 worth of stuff, or worse, for $5,000 worth of stuff that they're gonna charge them $20,000 for, because someone didn't read that contract. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Thank you for having me. I'm here most of the day if you wanna talk about something
Yeah,
you're working on.
he'll
Thank
be
you.
right over here. Thank you, Steven. Appreciate you.
So, were you guys here to learn about new contracts, or because we have a raffle?
I think that's mainly the reason why.
Yeah.
One more thing, our team leader, Carl Mitford, isn't here, but he's watching on Zoom.
Yep, I was gonna mention that. There's a couple things I was gonna touch on before we do it. Let's move on. Let's move on really quick.
Hi, Carl.
Hi, everybody. All right, so Sangeeta was the all-inclusive winner. So she won a ticket to Mega Camp, she won airfare, and she won hotel accommodations. There is one thing that I want to make it very clear to all of you guys before we move on to the next raffle. If we choose your name and you cannot go, you guys are not allowed to give that ticket to somebody else. We are going to have to do another drawing. So Sangeeta, you're going to be, if you can't go, please let us know. And for the people that we draw here, if you guys aren't able to go, please let us know because we're going to have to do another drawing. And for the few of you guys that are on YouTube Live that reached out to me or the staff personally, if we draw your name and you guys are on, I'm going to need a personal text message from you within 30 to 45 seconds of me drawing your name. If you do not text me within that 30 to 45 seconds, I will have to draw another name. So,
I love it.
Without further ado, Jasmine, do you want to come up here and help me draw a name?
Yeah. So what are we drawing for? This
is going to be for the ticket to Mega Camp next month. I think we have a few slides on Mega Camp itself, actually, if I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So Mega Camp, for those of you guys who don't know what Mega Camp is, this is when Keller Williams gathers all of their top performers throughout the nation. We put them on stage and they're sharing their strategies that they've learned. For those of you who came to Family Reunion, there's always guest speakers. We had Tony Robbins and Mel Robbins. They have not announced the guest speaker yet, but you guys know it's going to be someone amazing. This is an investment in your guys' business. If you guys are planning on coming, I highly suggest it. You guys will learn so much. And on top of that, it's a really fun and great time. We always do things as advisors. We always have a mixer, and we always do things as an office. And on top of that, if you guys do buy a ticket, we do have special hotel blocks with special deals for you that do end this Wednesday at midnight or 11:59. So if you guys do plan on coming, I would suggest getting that ticket soon, getting those hotel deals while they're still available, because they are running out quick because it is exactly, I think, 3.5 weeks away. It's August 12th is the first day, and today's the 15th. So yeah.
Airfare still reasonable too?
Yeah, I think airfare round trip from here to Austin, you guys can find something on Southwest for, I think, less than $200 to $250, which is a pretty good deal. And obviously there's those other airlines that you gotta find something cheaper. But I said to stay away from those ones. But without further ado, let's pick the winner for the ticket, which is come in like a $600 or $700 value. Jasmine, let's go. And YouTube Live, remember, if we say your name, I need that text message within 45 seconds or else we're doing another one.
45 seconds.
I mean, my phone number is 925-895-5740, just so you guys can have that text message ready, all right? Jasmine? And the winner for the Mega Agent Camp ticket from our office is... Read that.
Diana R. Diana Reyna.
All right, I don't know if you're here or not, or if you're on YouTube Live, but the 45-second countdown starts right now.
Give your number out again.
925-895-5740. Shit.
What are you doing? Delete all your texts? So while we're waiting on Diana,
925-895-5740. You got another 30 seconds.
For the next 30 seconds. What can we do to pass the time?
You got one from Diana Novella.
Diana's like, it was me.
That's the wrong Diana.
Let's do a trivia question.
All right, 15 seconds, Diana R.
Okay, here's
I don't
your
know if you're
trivia.
up there.
I'll do a trivia. There's no prize except bragging rights, maybe. Let's see. You get on a plane and fly from
5
Miami
seconds.
due south. What two South American countries
All
are
right.
you flying over?
Mexico.
Let me get this.
Next.
South
We got
America.
no text.
Sorry, Diana R. You
think about
just
that while we
lost
draw
your
another.
chance at going to Mega Camp Free. All right, next one, 925-895-5740. Another reminder of my phone number.
Okay, next.
All righty, and the next ticket winner is...
Oh, Brian Huang.
You're here! Congrats, Brian. Are you
planning on going?
I can't go.
All right, wow, another chance for somebody else. There we go. I bet you guys are loving the excitement here. Come on now. Third chance.
Okay.
They're not.
Mahi. Yeah, you're coming? All right, awesome. Well, there you go.
Congratulations.
Congrats. So we'll get that ticket over. We'll get those tickets over to you guys within the next month before we get here. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Hope you guys had a great day. Have a great one.
Carl, what does Carl want?
Yeah, coming back, guys.
Attention! Hold on 1 second, guys. Yes.
Guys, again, the reason I was mentioning that Carl is watching today is because in the chat he put, when we were going through good things, he and his wife just celebrated their 46th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations, Carl. 46 amazing years. And many more to come.
Awesome. Congrats,
Thank you for
Carl.
sharing.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a good one. That's crazy. It's 2 people that their names got called and they can't even do it. Thanks, John, for your time.
Yeah, you bet.
By the way, I was going to tell you, my daughter was in, I think, the 2nd grade. The whole class got lost. And today, all the kids went to the same life studio place.
Yeah,
This place is just French.
So I'll bring that form up too, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about that.
And when my daughter was in the chair, my wife was like, when did she get it? How did she get it? Blah, blah, blah. The woman goes, do you really want to know? Hold on. My wife goes, yeah.
Exactly, and if
She
they're
goes,
not asking us
your daughter was